Well, I'm not here to talk so much, to speak on the subject, because like you, I think I need to learn more about the subject, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here. But we certainly know, and we endorse the bill because our Pennsylvania Association of Realtors endorses this bill. So our local association, the Wilkes-Barre Association of Realtors, endorses this bill in light. We know, as being realtors, we know that school taxes are a big issue for the elderly especially. You have people living on fixed incomes, and school taxes continue to go up. It's necessary to fund our schools, but we feel that maybe there is a more equitable way that we can share the cost with everyone. This hits only homeowners that are supporting the school system, and it makes it hard for people living on a fixed income to continue to pay higher and higher school taxes. Likewise, the younger folks that we see trying to buy houses are also affected by higher school taxes. It makes them more difficult to get qualified for a loan, and it makes it harder for them to buy a house. So that is the reason why we're interested in supporting this Bill 76. And I am here again to listen to Chuck Lighting from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors tell us more about that. I'm happy to see our legislators standing up in support of this bill, and I think that there is compromise somewhere in between where we are now and where some people want us to be. I think the school districts certainly need to be supported. We need to focus on good education and have good citizens. But the question is, who is paying for it? It's just the homeowners and the property owners right now. It's not people who maybe don't own property. And a tax on personal income tax, sales tax, might more equitably share the burden of financing the school district. Thank you, and I'll be listening to the rest of the program just like you.
Thank you, Charlie. Tonight, we have our Pennsylvania lawmakers who care about you, the homeowners of Pennsylvania. And it gives me great pleasure to present Senator John Udicek, who is prime sponsor of Senate Bill 76. John, would you come forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie, and good evening. This is a terrific turnout on an issue that's very important to all of you and very important to me and to my colleagues in the General Assembly. So I'll just take a moment. I don't know if it's part of the program, but I wanted to introduce my colleagues that are here: Representative Eddie Day Kuczynski, Representative Karen Bovek, Representative Mulry, Jerry Mulry, and Representative Tara Tuhill from the Grace Hazelton area. My colleague in the Senate and partner on the efforts to pass and move forward Senate Bill 76, Senator Lisa Baker, could not be with us today. I was with her earlier in the day. She sends her regards, but she is also one of the prime co-sponsors of the bill. I also see my good friend, the Vice Chairman of the County Council, Ed Brzeminski, that's with us today. Thank you for joining us, Vice Chair Brzeminski. This is an issue that is important in so many respects. It's important first and foremost in my mind, and it's the reason that I'm one of the co-sponsors of the bill, and really have been property tax elimination, property tax review, property tax reform, whatever iteration that you want to call it. I've been a part of since I was elected to the State House back in 1998. In fact, my first public meeting that I hosted as a freshman state representative was in a very similar setting as this, in Nanticoke High School, where we brought the policy committee up to Nanticoke to talk about property tax reform in Pennsylvania. It wasn't a very popular idea at the time, but then after Governor Casey had tried with a statewide referendum to deal with the issue, and it failed at the ballot box, and voters across Pennsylvania had declined to support property tax reform. But it was clear from the communities that I represented here in the greater Wyoming Valley that folks were losing their home. Folks were not being afforded to enjoy the quality of their golden years because they had an inability to keep pace with property taxes. And that led me to do research, that led me to try to understand the issue in a better way, and that's why I tried to engage my colleagues. And many of those colleagues are no longer in the General Assembly, but I'll never forget standing on the floor of the House one day and taking to the microphone and saying, the people of Pennsylvania deserve relief from the burden of property taxes. One of the leaders from the other party at the time took to the microphone and said, I think the young man ran for the wrong office. He should be running for school board because the General Assembly doesn't do anything about property tax. I didn't realize how right he was. There is a disconnect, partly because in some regions of Pennsylvania, property tax is not an acute issue as it is here in northeastern Pennsylvania, Luzerne, Carbon, Schuylkill, Monroe counties. In some areas, it's a different story. The wage tax is the tax that's the burden. So it is a difficult issue. But I'm here to tell you, my time in Harrisburg, there's never been greater progress on the issue of property tax elimination. And there's one single reason for that. And it's not a politician, it's not anybody in Harrisburg, it's the city's citizen lobbyists that are sitting in the seats tonight. The Cyber Coalition, Dave Baldinger, who's become a dear friend, who's taught me a lot about this issue. 81 grassroots organizations, citizen lobbyists who travel to Harrisburg, who get in buses and come down and talking passionately and respectfully about this issue that impacts their everyday life. And as I said, this is first and foremost about how we fund education, public education in Pennsylvania. Right now, too many of our colleagues in Harrisburg are laboring under the myth that local elected officials on a school board can raise sufficient revenue to fund an adequate education. That may have been true in the 1800s. It is no longer true in the 21st century. The property tax system is antiquated, it's insufficient to fund public education. And if you talk to any financial expert, and if you talk to any elected official that's going to sit down and be honest with you, there's not a single person that's going to tell you that the property tax system is not flawed. Start with the reassessment system, inherently flawed. We leave it up to counties to decide whether or not they're going to do a reassessment. That's not even a decision by the Commonwealth. So immediately, you have 67 different tax zones in Pennsylvania, determined by whether it's county commissioners or county council, whether or not you're going to do a reassessment. In Luzerne County, we went 40 years between reassessments. And now it's been a handful of years. That system already is flawed. So any expert, any accountant, anybody that you talk to, any economist, is going to tell you the system is unfair, inherently flawed, and inadequate to fund public education. So why would you cling to that system? And the refrain that I hear is because it's the system, because it's complicated, because we're talking about $10, $12, $13 billion of replacing in terms of eliminating the property taxes and finding a new way to tax. The way I come at Senate Bill 76 and why I'm such an ardent supporter is I believe in a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I believe that the Commonwealth needs to play a larger role in how we fund education. We rank 47 in terms of our dependence on property. We're the worst, near the worst in terms of our overdependence on property tax system. That means Harrisburg's passing the buck to local school boards and asking them to fund. And then you get into the zip code battle. And if you happen to live in a wealthy zip code that has a blossoming commercial district, a healthy housing district, you're going to have a great school. But if you live in the old coal company towns that I live in, I grew up in, and you lost your industrial base, and you lost your housing base, then you're condemning a generation of children to inadequate education. I don't want to be a part of that. That's why I forced Senate Bill 76. That's why I want to see the elimination of property taxes. So it can force Harrisburg to the real issue. You develop a new funding system for schools, you develop adequate funding resources, and you can only do that. You can only do that from broad-based taxes like the sales tax or like the personal income tax. The shift from property taxes to a sales tax, modernized sales tax, a modernized personal income tax is the only way that you can give give our children a fair chance and an adequate education, no matter where they live and no matter what zip code they grow up in. That's why I'm here tonight, to talk about Senate Bill 76, to encourage your continued activism. It would not be anywhere near the goal line if it was not for your efforts. I'll leave you with this in terms of the status update. Senator Dave Argo, who's a dear friend of mine, a Republican from Schuylkill County, who's really led this charge. We've developed a work group, Senator Fulmer from Lebanon County, Democrat Senator Jimmy Schwank from Berks County. That work group has worked and tried to educate our colleagues, again, in understanding that Pennsylvania is really 67 very diverse counties. Allegheny County and Philadelphia County, as our urban centers, are very different from the rest of the state. And their tax issues are very different from the rest of the state. So we're trying to work with our urban colleagues, and many of them in Allegheny, and for the first time in Philadelphia, have come on and signed on as co-sponsors of this bill. And that is what's pushing leaders in Harrisburg. That's what's pushing the debate in Harrisburg, to get to a conversation where we finally address the real issue. How do we best fund education? Do you do it out of the pocketbooks of local taxpayers, back to school boards, or are we a commonwealth that's going to pull together, spread that burden, so that seniors who are living on fixed income do not have to shoulder that entire burden? That's what we're trying to accomplish. I'm very appreciative of Charlie reaching out and asking me to be a part of it tonight. And I do have to say, our friends in the Realtors Association, they're another big part of this. We've never had an association, a statewide association, that has stepped up the way that they have in terms of investing their money, in educating the public, and sending out direct mail pieces, television commercials, coming to forums like this. Without their assistance, we would not be as close as we are to advancing the debate on Senate Bill 76. I want to end by apologizing that I have to leave you tonight. I've heard Charlie's speeches before, so I don't have to hear them again. But I'm actually going on the LA Tyrone show to talk about Senate Bill 76 tonight on its radio show on WLK. So if this wraps up before 9, you can get on the telephone and call in and tell them how important Senate Bill 76 is to the people of Pennsylvania, particularly the people of northeastern Pennsylvania. Again, I want to thank you for coming out. Thank you for the passion that you've exhibited. Thank you for the support that you've shown to those of us that have signed on to Senate Bill 76. Thank you for caring about the next generation of kids in Pennsylvania who deserves a shot at quality education. Thank you very much. Have a great day. On your side, our next speaker is unable to be here tonight, but she did email me, talk to me, and that is Lisa Baker. And Lisa Baker is a co-sponsor, and she and Senator Yudichik are working together on Senate Bill 76. So I will read what she has emailed me to. Based on my conversation with individuals and groups across the senatorial district, there is a growing sense that this could be the legislation session where property tax elimination finally breaks through the political barriers that have thwarted previous efforts. Clearly, credit for this buildup of momentum must go to the groups such as the Taxpayers Cyber Coalition for their indefatigable efforts, and to the realtors who have begun contributing resources as well as giving voices to reform efforts. Senate Bill 76, of which I am a co-sponsor, reflects the extensive work done over many years to make sure that the number of alternatives for revenue replacements add up. Once the analysis who studies the measures declares there is no sufficient bill in, that will strip opponents of their chief objection. From a public standpoint, the biggest obstacle over the years has been fear on the part of many taxpayers about the unknown cost of their tax restructuring might hold for them. No matter how aggressively your advocacy, no matter how well crafted your arguments are, people are going to be persuaded mostly by the family bottom line. That accounts for why it is essential to hold an educational forum such as this one in King's College. Critics suggest
there are still some problems with the bill. We should be exploring amendments to solve them. I get questions about whether the owners of their vacation homes in the Pocono areas or those who commute to jobs in other states are getting a big tax break out of this. Those are the sorts of concerns that will hopefully be answered through these community forums. In my view, taxpayers deserve to see the bill debated and voted. The argument pro and cons are well known. About 40 years of study and debate. There is no hidden cache of information waiting to be unearthed. The drawbacks and deficiencies of property tax in both concept and how they are administered are now completely curable. Perhaps the most compelling argument is this: those who support a continuing reliance on property tax have done too little over time to make them fair or less arbitrary. Of the 50 members of the state Senate, 26 have signed on this bill. Getting to 26 in the terms of Senate will be voted to eliminate property tax and a clearly defined challenge for the applicant. The good news is that this has never been a partisan issue, and the bipartisan support is still evident. I want to thank Senator Baker for that. And now we're going to move on. And you see I have my notes all over here. Our next speaker, we have Representative Joe Mulry. He is a co-sponsor of House Bill 76. Representative Mulry.